So rumor has it that Marvel's gonna try and make Avengers Doomsday feel like a sequel to Avengers Endgame. Now, if you're somebody that follows all this stuff like I do, that might just sound like a crazy statement. Like, how could you go from Avengers Endgame to another movie and it feel like a sequel without explaining the last, I don't know, 20 projects or some shit? Well, after I sat and pondered about what the hell they could be talking about, I realized it might not actually be that hard to pull off. I mean, you essentially just need to do a time jump. And as nerds of other franchises like Dragon Ball or Star Wars, I'm sure most of us are used to things like time jumps. I mean, Marvel movies already technically have time jumps, but it's just interesting because there's so much content between Doomsday and Endgame. So what would it look like if you were to actually try and make a sequel to Endgame while pulling over all of the stuff that happened in Phase 4 and 5, but actually making Doomsday feel like a direct continuation of the Endgame story? Well, I'm going to answer that question with another question. Are time skips the best solution for shared universe's biggest problem? Which brings me to yet another question. What are shared universe's biggest problem? Well, if you ask me, it's the homework. The feeling that you have to keep up with every single thing to know what's going on in the story. And yeah, during the Infinity Saga, when everything just felt like the next episode, you know, each movie just felt like the next episode of the TV show. It didn't feel that overwhelming and crazy. But with Phase 4 and 5, it really did get that crazy. Even as a Marvel shill, I think I can admit that. But now that I've admitted that, now it's time for me to get back to being a Marvel shill and tell you how I think this is a great idea. But before I do, let's take a look at one of Disney's other big powerhouse franchises, Star Wars. Now, I haven't been keeping up with Star Wars as much as I used to, so I can't really speak to the quality of any particular project that you might be really mad about, but this video isn't really about that. It's more about writing structures for a big universe, not about how evil Bob Iger is and how he's destroying everything. Anyways, when you go from A New Hope to Empire Strikes Back, time has changed and the characters have evolved. And the same thing is true of the time jump between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. The point is, a lot of times with sequels, it can be nice to not know exactly what every single character has been up to the entire time. You know, it helps build the mystery of what's all going on. And not in all cases, but in some cases, sequels can really help reset the board to really make a movie feel like its own thing instead of just the next episode of the story. Now, I don't necessarily think that's true for Star Wars, at least not with the Skywalker saga, but in a lot of ways it was very true for Marvel. Throughout the first 3 phases, Marvel was really good at just piecemealing tiny little bits out and then interconnecting those things as they went along. So though, yeah, the Infinity Saga phases 1 through 3 felt like, you know, episodic pieces to a story, not every single one of those episodes needed the other episodes to exist. Not every single one of those stories was extremely dependent. And sure, were there some massive hiccups along the way? Yeah, in my opinion, Iron Man 3 is extremely dependent on the fact that you have seen the Avengers. But even then, as things have gone on, more and more is built on the history of the MCU. And now it's not only the history of the MCU. I mean, you're talking about everything live action from like Blade until now. That's a lot of homework. That's a lot to ask of new fans. So you know that one friend that always tries to get you to watch One Piece and you don't do it because there's so many episodes? Well, I think it's almost more reasonable to ask people to, you know, start One Piece at this point. But now that I've made my case for the homework problem, let's move on to time jumps, and specifically how time jumps could be a really good way to write in an expanded universe. Well, when I think about Marvel making Doomsday feel like a time jump, they are kind of saying, hey, you know all that stuff in Phase 4, 5, and 6? Don't worry about it. We'll catch you up. It kind of changes how I look at the MCU. Sure, it was all starting to feel like homework. But if they pull this off, it could make all the Phase 4, 5, and 6 content feel more like extra credit rather than homework. Well, let's take a look at Star Wars again, and specifically the prequel era. Now, a lot of us remember the 2008 Clone Wars animated series, but there was actually an animated series called Star Wars Clone Wars that ran between Star Wars Attack of the Clones and Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. And you didn't need to watch this Clone Wars series to watch Revenge of the Sith, but it was there and it was extra credit. Now, Marvel has arguably already done this. I mean, I talked about it earlier where things are episodic, but you might not need to see every single episode to understand what's going on in the overarching story. For example, do you really need to see the first Ant-Man movie before you see him show up in Captain America Civil War? No, not necessarily, but I think that it really helps expand the experience. So for somebody like me, I'm gonna watch Ant-Man before I see Captain America Civil War. But somebody else might watch Captain America Civil War and then go back and watch Ant-Man. So I guess what I'm trying to say, long story short, is I don't necessarily think that this whole Doomsday being a sequel to Endgame idea is really anything that new for Marvel. If anything, maybe it's kind of a return to form. And sure, I know the criticisms. They're in damage control because of all the brand damage that they've done to themselves over the last I don't know how many years. But I think to an extent this was bound to happen. As the brand expands, the barrier of entry for, new fans is just going to get harder and harder. And so even though I think some people might be burned by this whole switching homework to extra credit idea, people that have been keeping up with every single episode of the MCU, waiting for the build-up and waiting for the payoff, it can make some of that viewing feel like a waste of time. But the alternative is the brand just kind of dies. I mean, if we're really expecting people to keep up with this much content to enjoy an Avengers film, well then I think we're kind of cooked. Okay, well I think I've made my point pretty well with the whole, time jump thing and the extra credit over homework thing. But what would this actually look like if they were to make Doomsday a sequel to Endgame? So rather than looking at leaks and spoilers and all of that, I think it'd be more fun to look at where the characters are at the end of Endgame till now in the story. Like characters that are still hanging around that were prominent in the story of Endgame. Like Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes. Endgame ends with Sam Wilson getting the shield from Steve Rogers. So it'll feel really natural if you've only seen Endgame to start Doomsday with Sam Wilson as Captain America, or Bucky Barnes, how he's on a new Avengers team. Well, I could easily see Marvel just merging the Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes team and making it simple for the audience. I mean, they could throw Thor on the team and really have it feel like a solid connection to the original Avengers, or maybe even Hawkeye. Now, two big question marks are Hulk and Spider-Man, because Brand New Day hasn't come out yet, so we don't really know exactly where their characters are going to be. But what we do know is Robert Downey Jr. is going to be back, but he's just going to be playing Dr. Doom. And though Steve Rogers was shown as an old man at the end of Endgame, he was still time traveling right before that. They can easily have a young Steve Rogers Captain America show up in this thing. And hell, it could be the same Captain America that we followed through the entire Infinity Saga. But anyways, that's my opinion on this whole time jump situation. If they can ground at least the first act of Doomsday to the characters from Endgame, then yeah, I think they can kind of pull it off. And it's also just interesting because it's made me look at Doomsday and the MCU in a completely different light. Rather than just the next piece of a story, it's also going to be this thing that breathes new life into all the projects from Marvel Phase 4 and 5. I mean, there's probably going to be a ton of people that see Doomsday that haven't watched all that content. And so they're going to see Doomsday, and then they're going to see Secret Wars, and maybe they'll go back and, view some of that extra credit. It's also just fun to think about how these expanded universes are written, and how as they grow, you have to find new tricks or pick up old tricks to continue the story that you want to tell. Anyways, like and subscribe, leave me a comment and tell me how wrong I am, and thanks for watching.